This is nice.
Oh.
So
I see how this
let's
works.
see here. Are you on the YouTube? Are you seeing? Yeah. So, is it saying already that it's live?
Top left-hand corner.
Nice.
Again,
I know this is a fun experience for all of us, I feel, which is really lovely.
Oh, interesting. So how do we, this is cool.
Okay.
How do we?
There we go. There we go. New pin chat. Okay, there we go. So I'm actually watching it at the same time as I'm like seeing you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's pretty great. So what's happening here is that I can have the chat going, and I'm also looking at you, which is really fun. But I gotta move
this is great.
But yeah, I'm like, we're live. Like, this is what's happening right now. I'm like, we are live. This is what's happening. Cheers. This is the first time, my first YouTube live. So that's really exciting. Okay, yeah. Okay, yay. People are finding it. This is so much fun.
Wait, how do I know though? Do I know who's in?
No, you can't see it unless you log on to the live stream on the YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah. Too techie for me. Got it.
Yeah. Okay, let's see this here, and we're here. I'm gonna make your beautiful face a little bigger on my screen so I can look at you.
You can see my glow.
Okay, I can see your glow. I love your glow, but we have glows for good reasons. We have glows because we were goddesses before we came to this party. And welcome to the Everyday Goddess Live. Like, this is what we're doing here. This is the first one ever, which is a little bit, everywhere right now, but we're learning how to do this. And I'm so excited for tonight. I'm so excited to kind of debut this first YouTube live, which is so yay. And I'm so excited to be doing this with one of my dearest and oldest friends for sure. But we're going to talk about all the things. This is the Everyday Goddess Live. I'm Carlen Costa. I'm a clinical sexologist and psychotherapist, cannabis educator, CEO of the Everyday Goddess brand and founder of the Goddess Foundation. And we are here to talk about everything: women's health, men's health, lifestyle health. We're just going to talk about everything that affects us, I don't know, as people, and see where that goes. And I'm so excited today because today we're going to be having a great conversation with my friend, Dr. Natasha Colea. Yeah. I was like, where's the audience? Like, I need a clap button, I think. Like, yeah. So Dr. Natasha Colea is a pediatric emergency medicine doctor and simulation educator at the Hospital for Sick Children. Big shout out to sick kids. Woo-hoo. When Dr. Colea isn't working shifts in the ER, she can be found improving pediatric trauma management training, pediatric procedural skills workshops, and improving the educational experience of trainees rotating through the ER and being a member of the hospital peer support group, which does not surprise me. She is still part of a peer support and supporting all of the people that she works with. That's who she was in university when we went to school together. That's who she still is now.
True.
She believes in a transparent and humanistic approach to medicine. Despite the time and pressures of the ER, she will find an opportunity to turn a visit into an educational experience for all. As ease of accessibility to information has increased, which we're totally going to talk about, the amount of misinformation has grown.
However, yes.
We're going to talk about it. Okay. Finding a reliable resource about pediatric health has become more difficult. She's going to tell you where to find her. She also has an IG Live series, which I have been on, called Physicians in Living Rooms. She's great. She's Dr. Tash. She's my friend. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Yay. Thank you for having me, obviously. And it's so true when you say we go a long way. When I think about it, what, over 20 years now?
20 years. Are we that old already? Not like quite 20, like almost.
Like we met in 2001.
Okay, shit. Yeah, okay. I obviously didn't go to school for math. Like, that wasn't, I'm in the human sciences. That's
I do math in short little amounts, so I can do up to 20 years.
And it was so great. And how we met was just being involved in university and doing the things. We were with student council. We were softs at Western University. Big shout out to Western.
Sorry, hold on. Let me put that wine down.
Yeah, Western.
You.
We love you. Yeah, that's. And it's no wonder that you are still doing all of this amazing supportive work in your hospital, which is super incredible. So tell me a little bit about you, about your day-to-day, like introduce yourself in the best way that you want to and that you know how.
Yeah, I feel like if I were to give even just a snapshot of my day, you'd probably be like, how are you not drinking more wine than the wine that's currently in your glass? The secret is I'm only showing you the glass, not the bottle. But as you know, as Carlen was saying, I'm a pediatric emergency medicine doctor. I trained actually in a third world country. I did the Caribbean route, then trained a lot in the US afterwards, and then subspecialized. So my training has been pretty extensive and long, and people call me crazy for continuing to do more and more and more and more training. And the beautiful thing about that is when I look back at my training, when I look back at my medical school and going from a third world island to, US all over New York, almost like a nomad traveling everywhere to Canada.
You really did.
Yeah. Everywhere, like one Toyota Corolla with everything in it, right? It was unbelievable. Right. But the beautiful thing about that is it definitely shaped who I am as a human and definitely shaped me as a physician. And so one of the things I'm so grateful about is that transition from different parts of the world to different ways of medicine, different cultures and groups of people that I got to meet along the way. And it allowed me to keep a very broad perspective, especially coming to a city like Toronto, where, we are a multicultural city, but some people don't realize how multicultural we are versus there's still much more that we can learn, outside of the city. And so, pediatric emergency medicine is my niche. I did robotics and simulation, which was, another extensive year of training. And then on top of that, my goal is always to educate, empower, support, and not only the people that I work with every day and the doctors that are up and coming. July 1st was a new academic year. So we have a whole new slew of young, brave new doctors, and I'm really excited for all of them. But it's also about supporting your peers. There was always a tendency and a mentality of work first, work hard, push through it. If you're not well, physically, mentally, there's always been in the past this culture of the harder and the longer you work, the better you were. And I'm so excited to say that the culture is starting to change, where there is embracing how about you? How about your health? How about you being a better person for you will make you a better person for everyone else. And with that came my passion of not only advocating for, me and my colleagues as a peer support worker, but also advocating for parents to be better representation and understanding medicine and pediatrics for their children, to empower them to make decisions, being at home or not being at home, know what's good information, what's not. And then I took that one step further, and I have a passion, as you know, for women's health. And, how do we have these discussions with doctors? And that's where we are today.
And that's where we are today, talking about women's health, talking about primary considerations for women's health, right? Because it is there's so much diversity, I think, in the spectrum of women's health, right? When we talk about that, and, you must encounter it like in so many different levels, just like working in peds, like working with women, being a woman yourself, and like, having all of those considerations, all of those influences must give you such an incredible perspective and ability and practice, medicinal practice, to be able to see, and to understand this from many different angles. So I'm grateful you're here for that.
Thank you. And I think one of the things that, on top of women's health, as you know, I do a lot, and I'm a big advocate of the LGBTQ2IAS plus, which, I'm still learning which is the proper acronym. And one of the things I think there's a misperception is that pediatric emergency medicine, and they think women's health. What I want to remind everyone today and every day is that women's health starts at a young age. It doesn't start when you're 25 or 30 or 40, when you're already starting to have struggles and just discussions that you want to be having, you don't know how to have. And so I'd remind young women that come into the department for whatever concern with their parents, or even just general stuff, as I remind parents that your young women need to start developing an ability to speak for themselves and advocate for themselves, because there is no topic that's taboo, and it needs to start at a young age. Because the last thing you want is your daughter at the age of 20 to be too afraid to walk up to their doctor or go to an ER and talk about what is going on that they're concerned about.
Yes, exactly. I love that you said that, because there's so many, like, I work with adults primarily, right, in my practice. And there's so many women who come to me, and the conversation always comes back to, I really wish somebody had said this to me when I was younger. I really wish my mom had a conversation with me. I really wish my dad had a conversation with me. And then I always talk to my parents specifically, right? Consent starts at conception. Like literally, consent starts at conception. And that is how we need to start seeing and starting to discuss body autonomy, our health, awareness of our bodies and of ourselves. So I appreciate that you're saying that, right? Because how many women watching this really didn't have an effective or a kind conversation about menstruation, about sex, about consent, about healthy emotional intelligence, right? All of those things, which are all primary considerations, right?
Absolutely. And I think what we also need to recognize is, so one thing I'll backtrack and say, I did a lot of training in the US, but I also did training in Canada. So I bring different perspectives. I also did training in a third world country where, that idea of consent, a lot of those young women didn't have a lot of control over what they got to do with their bodies. And when I think about what the American Academy of Pediatrics did, is they standardized across the board with pediatricians and said, by age 10, and so this might blow people's minds, but by age 10, no matter sex of your child, how they associate, how they see themselves, you should start having those conversations of sex, rock and roll, drugs. And parents start to get a little freaked out and be like, 10 years old. And I go back and I go, let me be very transparent. There are children, women, young women who are 9 years old and having their first menstrual cycle. So we shouldn't be waiting until 10 years old for someone. So it's obviously case by case, but 10 years was kind of that baseline that they were trying to create, because you can imagine trying to create a new standard that is so uncommon, so unfamiliar for people. It's going to stir some feathers and rustle some feathers and it may be uncomfortable, right?
But the conservative party, sorry.
Right. But what people forget is that there are some very intelligent and very self-aware 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds. Now, I'm not just saying let them go out and do whatever they want. They're not even of legal age, but the ability to have conversations and start building conversations that are open about your body and your health and how to have those conversations, and maybe allow your child every once in a while in the doctor's office to talk on their own without being the mom or the father who's saying, I'll tell you what's going on with my child. Allows that growth to happen without realizing that growth is happening.
How many parents out there right now do not allow for their children to communicate?
Right.
Do not allow the space for their children to communicate what is going on in their bodies and their experiences. Let me tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, hold on a second. I mean, I think there's a difference between having compassionate conversation and actively encouraging your child to speak up and saying, hey, well, remember when you told mommy or daddy, this is what you're experiencing, right? Reminding your child of some things and coaching them. But when you just take over, I mean, that is where for you, it's very much from being able to have that body autonomy. For me, it's very much from that consent space. It's the same thing when I talk to parents and they'll say, what is the age you start talking about consent? What is the age you start talking about sex? And I say, as soon as possible. And the first way that you begin that conversation is the moment that they can walk and talk is the moment that you allow them to choose who touches them.
Yep.
So when somebody comes into the room and says, hey, like, come here, Sarah, like, let me give you a hug, right? It should never be, let me give you a hug. It should always be, hey, Sarah, would you like to have a hug? May we hug, right? And offering that option. Consent starts there.
You bet.
And I know that you and I both, grew up, but that very like you're Italian, I'm Portuguese. We grew up with that very there's like a respect thing. Somebody comes to your home, you have to kiss them 2 times, even if it's like your creepy uncle, and you're like, are you kidding me right now? You know what I mean? Right?
It made me do a lot of this as I got older.
Well, so just that experience alone, right? For many of us who are watching, who have kind of that cultural, I guess it's a cultural influence of being like having to show respect, like touching as a form of respect, or that I think is really what is already where, as women, especially, because I find it more with women. With men, it's like you give a handshake. With women, you have to go in for the hug and the kiss.
Yeah.
Right.
But we should take that mindset and go, okay, if it's a cultural respect to do it to people who are older, but there's also a respect for, that space, and respect for the person who may not feel comfortable, and respect. And the minute you address that at a young age, you change culture, you change the mindset of people, because at the end of the day, someone's comfort, and this goes back to all medicine, someone's comfort with themselves and with someone else in any interaction is more important than any cultural barrier that's out there. And we got to remember that, right? Some cultures, you have to respect that there's certain rules. If I'm coming into your home, I'm going to respect your cultural barriers. I can't shake your hand, or I can't hug you.
Absolutely.
But if there's going to be some form of contact, there's got to be 2 people who are consenting and also comfortable with that idea. And that's where I think, even at a young age, like you said, that's where we can start. That's where we can start molding conversations and transparency. Because I'll tell you right now, when you start at a young age, telling children, this is okay, this is not, saying please and thank you, being respectful, what are you comfortable with, what are you not, you're opening up their mind to build connections of understanding of barriers, boundaries, consent. And if they don't have that at a young age, they're not going to have that much later, or they're going to struggle with developing and finding that. And you know what, at the end of the day, when it comes to health, mental and physical, that you see those barriers come up because they've never had the tools to be able to talk about it.
You must see it in women in the, in your practice. I see it women from a psychosocial perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like in my practice. And let's just quickly talk about, the factors that affect women's health statuses,
Absolutely.
right? And I think that we talked about where it starts. Where it starts is at a young age.
Yeah.
Where it starts is where we start talking about consent and how we start to frame that in our lives, and starting to normalize conversations of, may I touch you?
Yeah.
Would you like a hug? Giving option and choice before you go in and offer physical contact. But so I was reading here it is, the National Organization for Women, and reports that the core issue for women is reproductive rights and justice. Okay. And when we're talking about reproductive rights and justice, we're talking about safe and legal abortion and access to it. We're talking about affordable and effective birth controls, and other contraceptions, and reproductive health education for all. But the factors that also affect our health status, right? This is what some of our core issues, but I feel these core issues have become because of the experience of women is about major life transitions. So pregnancies, motherhood, menopause, right? The differences in women's physiological processing of physical and emotional stresses for women, right? Infertility, perinatal loss, poverty, discrimination, violence, unemployment, isolation, all of these things factor into women's health. Where do you see that? How do you experience that? Talk to me about it, Goddess.
So I'm going to say this is a large, probably topic that could have its own 2-3 hour discussion.
Oh, yeah.
But what I have to say is that we see it in the ER when it comes to young women. And I'll say even pediatrician offices. Even before I came to Canada, I had to, spend some time in just an office and have continuity of care. And I'll tell you right now, it makes me really sad, and sad in not a like, I'm so sad, this is how it is. But the reality is that the majority of young women do not know how to express their needs, and do not know how to express their fears, and they do not know how to express their concerns. And again, across the board, like you said, there's so many factors to it. Is it because as they were raised, they were told not to talk about it? Did they ever experience trauma that doesn't allow them to want to talk about it, or fear of talking about their experiences? And one of the things I have to say that we do a really great job in the emergency department is, if you are a young teenager or even a young female and a young male, I'm just saying when it comes to female reproduction and just kind of the topic you're talking about, is that if you come in and we even see you and there's even something of question in your presentation with your parent, we actually ask the parent to step out of the room and allow their child autonomy and one-on-one time with us as physicians, because we find that a lot of times it allows that openness. It opens the door to transparency. It opens the door to a comfortable environment. And there's always that caveat of, if you're going to do something to hurt yourself or someone else, that we have to disclose that. Otherwise, if you're here to talk about something really private, this is what we're here for. And we need to start doing that more consistently across the board, because we need to allow young women, young men who, identify as women, and women who identify as men,
all the genders,
gendered, right? Like every community, the opportunity to speak, and their opportunity to speak in a safe environment that's created. Now, we understand in the emergency department, we see a lot of the heightened concerns, but we also have that responsibility as healthcare workers, as healthcare takers, like we just take care of you. We need to take that moment and have that moment with every individual we see that has that opportunity to speak their mind. Because if we don't, it's a lost opportunity every time we don't. And so I see it when it comes to just even talking about menstrual cycles. Parents come in with their young females and they're having menstrual cycle concerns, and the parent is just the only one that's talking. And again, maybe it's a cultural thing. Maybe it's, that's just how it's always been. But the reality is,
I think it's because everybody's uncomfortable. I think that's what it is. I think that the reality is that people are uncomfortable with having these conversations about menstruation, and then people just take over for one another, because that is how we provide safety for one another, right? So you take over for your kid when you're talking about it, or, you dismiss information that you relay, because that is, you're trying to create the emotional safety. Now, the fact is that more women go to the doctor than men. Like that's facts, right? Which, yay for us. However, what I find though, and what I really saw demonstrated over this past year, is how many women though also access alternative healthcare, and all of the different variations of what that means.
Right.
And because some of it is really great and some of it is really shit. And
I'm going to say, yes, I agree with you 110%.
Yeah. And some of the shit though, and the great, I find a lot of women access, especially over this time, women access alternative forms of healthcare, because it feels like there is a barrier for women to access or it's not traditional. That's not even the right word. Western models, medical models, the current medical models that we live in. Why do you think that? Why I can tell you a million reasons why, right? Like I can tell you that I don't think that doctors, like when I go see my MD, I have a fantastic family doctor, but I also am a fantastic advocate for myself. Obviously, have you seen
There's the key right there.
Right? And that let's like definitely come back to that, right? How we can be best advocates for ourselves.
Right.
But I guess, is that the disadvantage? Do you think that women, right? Men just never go to the doctor. Women go all the time. However, I don't find, like, some women are amazing advocates, some aren't. Are there ways that we can be better advocates for ourselves when we're talking to our doctors?
So I think I want to quickly like go back a little bit. So we're talking about non-traditional, and I'm going to say, you know, do I see that a lot in the emergency department? Did I see that even before I came here? Yeah. So when we think a lot of non-traditional, we think a lot of naturopathic, natural remedies, natural treatments.
Yeah.
Can I say truth? And this is going to be me fully transparent and candid.
Yeah. I want transparent and candid.
Can I say that naturopathic medicine has its role? Yes. Can I say it has its role in place of Western medicine? Absolutely not. There's a lot of things that you just can't replace one with the other. Do I think that if we find a harmony between the two, there could be a great, strong adjunctive management in a lot of the patients that we see? 100%. Now,
there it is. I'm just gonna clap that out.
I'm all about it. And
it can be both.
It can be both. What I do also want to remind people is that, are there naturopathic physicians, as they call themselves, who do a crappy job? Yes, but there's also physicians who do a crappy job. So let's not just say it's one versus the other. What we need to do is also recognize is that not everything naturopathic with the word natural in front of it is natural and it's good and it's healthy. We got to remember that 99.9% of the stuff that is pushed in terms of naturopathic vitamins and pills are not FDA approved, as a lot of us know. And there are a lot of times we see a lot of illnesses secondary to misuse of things that are natural.
Give us an example. I totally want to hear an example of this.
Okay.
Like tell me about like people taking too much vitamin C or vitamin D or whatever it is.
So typically it's been known that vitamin A and vitamin D overdoses can cause this thing called intracranial benign hypertension. So what happens is that fluid builds up in your brain. You get really bad headaches. And that's just kind of what happens. And this is because of an overdose of two common vitamins. Same with
vitamin A and vitamin D. Is that what you said?
And then you can also see that with acne creams. So look, that's a medication that's prescribed by doctors. Use it too much can cause that. There's naturopathic stuff like vitamins that can cause that. If you overdose on too much iron, you can cause yourself to cause bleeding in your intestines. You can cause toxicity to the point where you develop weakness. You can cause mental status changes. So iron, that's a natural thing that people are like, oh, I want to make sure I have a normal amount of iron in me. Make sure that you're taking the appropriate amount of iron in you as well, right? So there are things like, I think it's every year, if I'm not mistaken, the last statistics I saw was 1,000 to 1,500 ER visits a year are due to an overdose in a naturopathic medication or vitamin or supplement. That's a lot of ER visits for something that we say is natural and safe. And I think that's something that we need to talk about more often and remind people that in moderation, and we need to make sure. And that's the other thing is the FDA doesn't follow those. There is no reporting process for overdosing on naturopathic things. There isn't a reporting process for overdosing on a medication that's prescribed.
Interesting.
Right?
I wasn't expecting you to say vitamin D. I'm not going to lie. I wasn't expecting you to say vitamin D. And it's like my brain is like exploding right now because my feed is a mix of both, right? Like my
Yeah.
Instagram feed, my feeds are a mix of both. It can be both. I'm
Give me a
science and
little
sacred.
bit of both.
Yeah, I'm science and sacred. Here we go. Let's see where the two shall meet.
Mm.
And the one thing that I've been seeing big time is take your vitamin D. Now, some of that stuff though is some of the science behind it, right? Especially those of us living in the Northern Hemisphere.
This is 100% true.
Yeah, absolutely. Living in that, this is exceptionally applicable, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to discredit it because like I'm in it, I'm taking vitamin D, I'm doing the things.
For sure.
And how can you tell, especially right from women, how can you tell if you're taking enough, how to take enough? Naturopathic, ND or MD, right?
Yeah.
What do you say? What do you recommend? What do you think? Because I want to know if I'm doing this wrong so that my brain doesn't do the things that you just said are really scary that could happen.
So I always say, just like with everything else, one, don't make assumptions, right? So let's start with, if you're going to provide yourself something that's supplemental, don't make an assumption that you're at a deficit. Let's start with that, right? So for instance, I train in Ohio, I'm here. On average, a good chunk of the population does not get enough sunlight. So we are typically vitamin D deficient, okay? The other thing too is, so where you go is, don't assume you're deficient, find out if you're deficient, okay? Because your body only needs so much of every vitamin and every antioxidant and every supplement to function, right? Let's be very honest. You can Google, and again, this is not trying to say that everyone can be a doctor or a naturopathic, but you can Google what each of those vitamins do. A, works with your skin, gets you better, like good, strong eyesight. These are just general. D, helps you kind of develop the color of your skin, the strength of your skin, helps with functioning organs. E, helps with reproduction of cell breakdown, helps kind of be an antioxidant. B12 does the same thing. So these are just general.
Love B12.
Right. So these are just general things that each of them do. But remember, when you Google, you don't see the big, bad, ugly, scary things that each of these things can do. Not always, because again, they are not monitored. They're not controlled.
Because marketing.
Correct. And that's exactly what it comes down. Because of marketing. So don't assume, if you feel or you're concerned you are, start with getting basic vitamin levels if you're concerned. Okay. You can talk and advocate with your doctor. I'd like to know. Now, typically, if you are deficient, there's symptoms that you'll have for each of the individual vitamin deficiencies. Now, that's step one. Step two, if you look in Health Canada, Health Ontario, ask your doctor, the recommendations usually stay typically the same of how much you should be getting of every vitamin, every supplement out there, if you really think about it, at baseline on a daily basis. And they'll even give you food options if you don't want to take supplements. They'll say, eat these things, and then we'll provide you with what you need. Now, this is putting aside the fact that, let's say you're anemic or you're iron deficient because you have bleeding disorders, or you have excessive heavy periods, menorrhagia, or you have something that causes you to be anemic at baseline. That's different. That's where you can work with your physician and your naturopath to make sure you have the right amount of iron in you for the right amount of time, so that you're not overdosing or you're not taking excessive amounts.
And don't do the ring thing. Have you ever done the ring thing? Oh my God, should we try? Do you not know this ring thing? Okay, so the best old wives tale. I love
what are we doing?
Okay, I'm going to interrupt your very awesome, very awesome.
I want to know about the ring thing now.
But so this is the ring thing. Okay. So if you have a gold ring,
as
I do in my hands here, you can rub it on your skin. And if a black mark shows up, you are iron deficient. I am doing fine, apparently, according to the old wives' tale. Let me see. I got other.
Is this the same thing where, like, post your vaccine, you'd stick a magnet on you?
Oh my God, is that a thing? Somebody said that? Really?
Where have you been?
You could not paying attention to the craziness of what people think about the vaccine. Okay, so typically, this is like the first time actually in my life that has not worked. So that's really interesting. That's the first thing to say. Secondly, so I know that there's people watching this who know exactly what I'm talking about, that you can run a ring. So you take a gold ring and you run it on your skin, and a black mark will show up. And if you're iron deficient, it means you have a black mark. Have you never heard of this?
So the reason why I've never heard of this, the reason why I've never heard of this is because there's so many scientific statistical questions that I have that come with this. Has anyone ever done that and then gone to their doctor and actually tested to see if they're iron deficient? That's what I'd like to know first question.
Actually, yeah, I did. Sorry. So it did actually ring true, but like it's the coincidence is also right. I was going to say
we need numbers.
Causational.
We should just get a whole bunch of people doing it and look at the numbers. Right. Better than getting poked with a needle.
Right. If you're watching this right now, comment if you know what I'm talking about, please.
And I can't see comments, so
yeah,
please.
I'll let you know. You know. But okay, so aside from the old wives' tale, let me know, right? What are some, okay, we're talking about vitamins, we're talking about supplements, and I think this is actually really, really important because like I take vitamins, I take supplements, I do it all. And like, I'm a big fan of B12. I'm a big fan of omega-3. I do take some vitamin D because I live in the Northern Hemisphere, right? And I do find that those ones, especially, like I take some other ones, but those ones especially, I definitely feel in my body. I definitely feel a change, a response, a positive response. But what are some maybe symptoms or considerations that women should think about or look at? What is our bodies doing that tells us that we need to maybe talk to somebody? There's the question. The question is that.
So where do I start? Because I will tell you, even from experience of working in an ER where I only get so much time with someone, I don't know this person that comes in, but there's many times, okay, so from experience, I had a young girl come in and with her parents, and they were like, we just saw a naturopath, and this naturopath, and I was like, so what was the reason? They're like, she's been weak, she's been tired, she's been, not feeling, her activities levels are low. She find like she'll sleep more than she usually does. And I said, okay, so what did the naturopath do? And so the mom said, well, we brought in the naturopath. They put her hands on this metal ball that was attached to this machine. And then it spit out about 14 different pages of things that's going wrong with her. And we got really concerned and brought her in. Okay. So I read this 14-page report. And half the things in there were like, one of them was lead toxicity. And I went, if your child had lead toxicity, they would not be able to stand or talk. They would be altered. They would be to the point where like lead toxicity in a really bad level could lead you to being comatose. Like, these are things. And so I read this report and I Googled this person. This was a while back. And I was like, do I report this person? Because this is ridiculous. But I took that and I went, okay, forget what they're being told. Let's talk. Let's figure out what are these symptoms? How often are they happening? And after 30 minutes with this young woman, I learned she had an eating disorder. And it was nothing that anyone had thought or considered. The family did not even want to think about that as a potential because this is their young female and no one does that in their family. And it was just basic things like magnesium levels were low and calcium levels were low and phosphate levels were low and iron levels were low.
Magnesium also great for women to take, right? That's also a general deficiency, I find.
It's a general and also is very in common. Like if you have a calcium deficiency, that's a common one you kind of see hand in hand. And that goes at the basic cellular level and the way our electrolytes move from one cell to the other. Yeah. We don't need to get to that point, but so it's one of those things where, what are our bodies telling us? So as women, there's certain things that we need to be super hyper aware about. And as parents of young women, if we're finding that our children are talking about being excessively tired and maybe persistent headaches or dizziness, lightheadedness, general weakness, persistent belly pain, abnormal periods or menstrual cycles that may have been normal before, not so normal now, changes in skin, losing hair, excessive weight gain. There's everything that you can say from, we call it organic and non-organic. And organic means that we can find something by doing blood tests and blood work that we can correct to bring, you or your child back to a healthy level, feeling better. Then there's the non-organic part, which is the part no one wants to talk about, which is the mental health aspect of everything.
Hey, there it is.
And what I want to say is, even if there's something organic going on, there is always a mental health component to everything that goes on physically with yourself and with your children. And anyone wants to tell me that persistently being tired hasn't negatively affected your mental health, it absolutely has. And I'm going to say it just like I say it to everyone. So when we think about like symptoms, do we always work everyone up for the organic stuff? Yes. But if you've been worked up, or your child has been worked up for years on the organic end, and the answers keep coming back as normal, why are we so afraid to have the non-organic conversations of saying, hey, something else is going on and we need to address it?
I love this. You know what this is making me think of? This is making me think of when I see women who come to me to talk about vaginismus, dyspareunia, but especially vaginismus, because vaginismus especially definitely has like it says it right there. There is a physiological response, right? Your body just shuts down. Like it is not receiving you. Nothing is entering you. Vaginismus is when your body, when you have pain with sex or any type of penetration, that type of thing. And there is a psychological component, and you can't, like, you can talk to your doctor as much as you want to, like, sure. But first of all, the doctor only has 5 minutes. Secondly, you can have all the creams, all the things, we could talk about dilators, but you can't do dilation and gradual dilation or any type of treatment on vaginismus.
So you break those barriers down
without having the mental health component supported.
Right.
And that, I think, is an exceptional example of what you're saying here, as to how, like, there's tons, our bodies do a lot of stuff, but we have to remember that sometimes our bodies are just responding to the outside stuff, not the inside stuff.
Yep. And we see this commonly in young women who have persistent headaches, persistent belly pain, changes in their menstrual cycle. And then the more and more you dig, the more and more you find out that there's anxiety, there's some sort of PTSD, there's some sort of feeling of body shaming themselves. And this is not, I want everyone to know, this is not across the board. This is not blanketed. No. What I'm doing is providing examples of, if you're ever in a position as a parent and you're like, my child's struggling and all the tests in the world have been done, as a parent, you need to be a parent and step up and say, it's okay, let's talk about what else could be going on.
And not dismiss it. The same. As a woman, the same. Right? Like, and not dismissing your symptoms, not dismissing what is going on. And, headaches, how many things could headaches be? Headaches could be dehydration, right? What else tell me, Tash, what else could a headache be?
Headaches could be dehydration. It could be musculoskeletal, meaning tension because of stress, grinding. You could be like chewing on your own mouth at night and clamping down. It could be glucose. So too high of sugar in your body, too low of sugar in your body. It could be too high of magnesium in your body. It could be too low of magnesium. It could be too high of calcium. It could be too low of calcium. Okay. It could be anxiety. It could be depression.
Light sensitivity.
It could be like you actually have migraines.
Yeah.
And then the migraines is this something that you're going to be for life? Or is there triggers to your migraines? And now you're breaking it down even further. Is this because just that day you hit a head? You could have a concussion. You never bothered to stop and manage because you thought that it was okay just to push forward and not talk about what you're going through and not take time to take care of yourself. There's a list. I can get into even the worst kind of things. There could be something going on inside of your brain that we don't want to talk about because those are the really sad, bad, scary things. But there could be something going on inside. But there is a large list of things that headaches could be. But you need to be able to talk about it. You need to talk about what you're feeling. You need to talk about it, and you need to have, this is where I'm going to go and say, you need to have a doctor or a naturopath or a therapist who is open, provides an environment of calmness, transparency, and welcomes your words and your feelings and what you're going through. Because if you don't have someone like that, then you're not getting the best kind of care that you should be getting from every one of those providers. And it starts, unfortunately, sometimes with you as being the advocate for that environment. I want to be able to talk to you. I want to be able to feel that you're listening to me. I want to know that you're listening to me and not being dismissed for how you feel about things. And if you are, that's where you should be able to say to yourself, okay, I'm not getting what I need here. I'm going somewhere else. And sometimes that can be, I'll be honest, in the physician world, it can be perceived as doctor shopping. But I can promise most other people that it only takes 1 or 2 tries to find the right physician who's going to listen to you, the right naturopath and right therapist who's going to listen.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
Do doctors get pissed off about doctor shopping?
Yep. Look how easy. I want to know. That's an easy answer for me.
I want to know why. Because as a therapist, I do not get pissed off when that happens.
Okay. I think because there's still this cultural idea, or this, maybe physicians, that it's almost, to them, it's like, I didn't give you what you want, but I thought I did. Like, I thought I provided everything, but clearly you don't feel that way. Versus the mentality of, maybe we just don't jive. And maybe you need someone who can listen to you in a different way that I listen, or who can communicate with you in a different way that I communicate. Because let's be honest, a lot of the older doctors are not going to communicate like a lot of the younger doctors, and vice versa, right? So it all comes down to, and this is what I practice, what I preach. My family doctor is someone who has known me since I was born, right? But my family doctor has provided me what I want from a family doctor. I want someone who's going to take the time to listen to me, not dismiss me, but also is firm with me when it comes to being honest about what I want. And how did that happen? Is because as I got older and I started to see him as on my own, he asked me what I wanted from a physician. And I don't think a lot of people ask that. Think about it. Someone comes to you, Carlen, and meets you for the first time. And I know you provide this environment because I know you as a person, and I know this is what you're about. But I've started to use this in my practice too. When someone comes in and I establish, this is why you're like, this is what our goal is today. I do turn around and ask them, what is your goal for coming here today?
It has nothing to do with me.
Right.
It's nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with us. It has to do with the person in front of us.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think women, we need to continue to consider is being prepared for these appointments and making sure that you're coming in with a page with like symptoms, with like occurrences, with, hey, I ate this and then all of a sudden this felt, and see if there's any type of patterns. Being an advocate for your own health is about being accountable for the experience of your health.
Yes.
And that's why I get really frustrated. I got really frustrated about, or I continue to get really frustrated about the disinformation about like vaccine and menstrual relationship. We're not going to go into it because that's like a whole other hour of conversation. But like, that's why I get really angry about that disinformation, because this is like that, all that is doing for so many people is just bringing up an alarm or making them pay attention to something that they haven't paying attention to.
Correct.
And now all of a sudden everything is wrong, and people who are naturally anxious are working through a lot of anxiety and a lot of mental health that has compounded because of the pandemic.
Yep.
All that's doing is just irritating that anxiety and bringing people to question logic.
Right. And
what
goes with that is that I'm gonna say this to women across the board, is that we are special beings. Okay. I'm not trying to say we're more special than everyone else, but we are, right? We are women. The way our hormones work, the way our bodies work, we are able to hopefully the majority of women have the experience, if they want it or they don't, have the ability to, like, we can create human life. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty special.
Right. We push that human life out of our body. We feed that human life with our own body. Okay. And on top of that, then there's an expectation to be a partner and someone who is much more organized and cleanly and run a household. So is it true that women are superheroes? Yeah. In a way, I'm going to say we are.
I say goddess. So you say superhero, I say goddess, you know, like.
And think about it this way. How many, I'm gonna put this out there, and I bet no one's ever actually thought of it this way. How many times do you think women in a day dismiss a symptom or a feeling at the expense of, but I need to do this for my family. I need to do this for my job. I need to do this because if I take time off, I'll be seen as weaker or lesser. And if I'm trying to work up for that promotion, it's not going to happen. So you stop and you go, let me dismiss that symptom.
Or we normalize the pain. Like women are supposed to have bad backs and this pain with menstruation. It happened to my grandmother. My grandmother dismissed her back pain. It ended up being ovarian cancer, which is what killed her.
Right. So,
so that experience.
So you dismiss
how we dismiss it.
Right. And then what happens is it becomes normalized. So it no longer is a symptom. Then guess what? You go into your doctor's office and your doctor goes, have you had this symptom? Have you had that symptom? And you're like, yeah. Or it becomes, oh yeah, 3 years ago. And how many women, if there are a bunch of women in this room, and even men who have, advocated for their wives or partners, how many times have you gone to doctors and be like, oh yeah, 3 years ago, and the doctor goes, 3 years ago, and you're here today? And why is that? I think it's a misplaced sensation, a misplaced response by physicians. Is it appropriate all the time? Absolutely not. But the reason being is because in those 10 minutes, a doctor can't be expected to figure things out that has been going on for 3 years, that as women, we have been dismissing. And so guess what? Now this is where it's our time to stop dismissing symptoms, stop dismissing the way we feel about things, normalize it, so that when you go for those appointments, you can walk in and say, for 2 months, this is what's been going on, and now I need to talk about it. And that is what's going to get you the best kind of care, because the reality is you need to be your best advocate. And I'm going to say it over and over again.
Yeah, you have to give people something to respond to. Right? Like you can't just say, this sometimes happens. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. If you work with me, like you have to get like a menstrual app, and not because I want you to track your menstruation, but I do. But because some of the apps are so great. Have different options, right? Like you can talk about pain, you can track your mood, you can talk about your weight, you can track your temperature, your basal body temperature. Like so many of those apps are so incorporated to allow you to take even just a general snapshot of your overall health. So that doctors do have something to respond to, whether it's naturopathic or whether it's medical Western, right? Like whichever way, the whole point of all of this, and the biggest primary consideration for women, is about learning how to actively be an advocate for your health. And that starts with you being accountable for your daily, monthly, weekly, the experience that you have in your body. Dr. Natasha Kalia, this has been great.
It's been wonderful. I love it. We should do this more often.
Oh, we will. Don't you worry. We're just getting started, baby.
Okay.
Okay, but anything else that you would like to say to anybody watching, to the women that are watching, to remember, to think about? This has been so wonderful. Thank you.
I honestly cannot say anything more than, remember your why. And I say this for everything. And when it comes down to being a woman who's in medicine, and a woman who's had to advocate for herself in her own, again, transparent. I have a lot of medical things I've gone through, and a lot of mental health stuff I've gone through. And experiencing it from this side and experience it from the patient side, always think about your why. And at the end of the day, your why should never be something at the expense of your health. So if your why is because you're afraid of your job, or your why is because you're afraid of what someone's going to think of you, those are negative whys. Your why should always be brought back to you, and remembering that there are going to be people out there that if you're unwell and you're not at the best of that you can be, you can't be well for everyone else. And there's going to be people who are going to not be happy for you for doing that. They're going to want you to get better. And there's always a positive spin at the end of the day. So your why should be, why? Because I'm worth it. Why? Because I deserve this. Why? Because I'm just as important as everyone else in my life. And why? Because I deserve to put me first. And why? Because I deserve to speak up for myself. And in the process of speaking up for myself, I'm going to normalize women being open about their health and being open and advocating for themselves. And physicians will start seeing that this is okay, and we'll start breaking down those barriers. So that is the why, those positive whys. You are worthy. You are a goddess.
Yeah. Hey. Oh my gosh, I love that. Thank you so much. Dr. Tasha Kalia, how can people connect with you and hang out, watch your show, watch your own IG Live series, Physicians in Living Rooms?
Yes. So I try to do Physicians in Living Rooms at least once a week, once every 2 weeks, with really like experts across the board. And Carlen's been on there before, and I've had requests for her to come back. Apparently there has been a big hit with her in our last one, which was amazing. Really, really amazing. But on Instagram, I do that. And then every month I do stuff for families and parents, which is called Reflections from the ER. So we talk about kind of ER stories. And then I just post a lot of just educational stuff and advocacy for misinformation, breaking down those barriers, how to find it, how to break those down and not be, at the end of the misinformation spectrum, and be at the front end of providing positive information. And so you can find me on Instagram Live at dr.tashofficial, and on Instagram with the same name. And I don't have a YouTube channel, but I'm going to join everyone on here with Carlen whenever she wants me back.
Yeah, that's okay. You can be our everyday goddess physician.
I like it. I need a sweater that says that now. Everyday goddess MD.
MD. Oh, we're going to do that. We're totally going to do that. I like that. I love
Do you know how many female doctors would purchase that sweater?
Everyday goddess. Okay. Now we're talking money, girl. Now, that's now, okay.
Women empowering women and supporting it and talking about women's health and how we can make women doctors and women all over the world better. So,
absolutely. All right. You got to help me do something though. We got to close up all of the Everyday Goddess chats by getting our hearts up. So we get our hearts up. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I love you.
Love you.
See you later.
Bye, everyone.